Yo, how's it going everybody, and welcome back to this Mantine course. In today's video, we're going to be building a small app, and we're going to be learning about how to use the light theme and dark theme capability in most of these components. So this is what we're building right here. Like I said earlier, it's a small app. We have these cards that are responsive to changes in the actual web browser, so it'll collapse properly. And most importantly, we have this button in the top left corner right here that can toggle between light theme and dark theme. So right now it's in light theme and all the components are colored as such. And if I go into dark theme, we'll see that they're colored differently. And the coolest part about this that I don't think I've seen ever in any other library is the fact that it's stored in local storage. So right now I'm in dark theme. If I refresh the page, it'll still save as dark theme. Awesome. Without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so last time we left off, your app should have looked something like this right here. We were using the Mantine provider. So what we're going to do is we're going to scratch all of this, and we're going to start from the beginning. I'm going to show you guys how to structure the actual app in a way so you can actually use the dark theme in every single file automatically. So going into my code editor, I'm going to go ahead and open up my Explorer tab, and I'm going to get rid of all of this information right here since we're not going to need any of it, as well as get rid of this import tag. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I went ahead and created a folder called components. I'm going to create two files inside of it. One is going to actually host the light to dark theme button, and the other one is going to host our cards, our containers, all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to click new file, and I'll call it light dark button.tsx, and the next one I'll just call it cards.tsx. Now your app should bug out because of course we have nothing inside of there. Alright, so I went ahead and opened up the beautiful documentation that Mantine provides, and I went into the grid section, and this is what we're going to be using for our cards to be able to collapse on each other at a certain breakpoint. And like a lot of libraries, Bootstrap, Material UI, Mantine, they all have grids. In Mantine's case, they use Flexbox Container for their grid system. And so if we scroll a little bit down, we are going to see all of these different types of grids. We even have this live examples of how we can have our grids look like here, but we're going to scroll a little bit more down and we'll see this grid right here called responsive columns. This is actually what's going to allow us to, at a certain breakpoint, collapse our cards on top of each other. So if I were to go into my inspect tool really quickly, I'll just show you guys what I mean. So right now if we see it's horizontally stacked like this, and then if I minimize it, it goes into 2 by 2, and then it just goes 1 by 1. Alright, so to implement this, it's going to be really simple. I'm going to go back into my VS Code, and I'm going to go ahead and copy this basic app.tsx stuff right here, and I'll just paste it inside of both of these files. And I'm going to get rid of this app CSS import since we don't have it there. So for our light dark button, I'll just call it light and dark mode button, and I'll export the exact same thing. And for their cards, you guessed it, I'll just call it cards, and I'll export cards as well. So now what I'm going to do is go back into the docs, and I'm just going to go ahead and copy this grid information right here and just import it into my cards file. So now we also have to import it. So I'll just do grid, and we want it from Mantine core, and let me just make it prettier, like so, using prettier. Inside of my app.txs, this is our main hub for all of our components. So I'm just going to go ahead and import cards from our component cards. And so now if I go back into my app, we'll see that we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. And if I were to do it in responsive mode, we'll see that it will collapse. So now it's on 2 by 2, and then on top of each other. Awesome, so now let's go ahead and import and add our cards. So before we continue, there's a few more grid configurations that we need to add, because what's going to happen is when we add our cards, they'll be stretched as far wide as it possibly can, and that's not going to look good from a user's perspective at all. So to fix that, I'm going to go back into my VS Code, and inside our grid, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a justify space around, so it's not at the very end, and it's not space between, it's just around. And the next thing I'm going to do is inside of each of these grid columns, I'm going to get rid of this MD and LG3. Whoops. And first thing I'm going to do is I'll do style is equal to max width at 350 pixels. And the next thing we'll do is SM is equal to 4 and XS is equal to 4. Now, what does SM and XS stand for? So what that means is if we go into the grid documentation and we read right here, it says here, use breakpoint props XM, SM, MD, LG, and XL to make columns respond to viewport changes. So basically that just means at a certain breakpoint, we want our columns to reflect a change. So in this example, up to MD, there will be one column. From MD to LG, there will be 2 columns. And from LG and up, there will be 4 columns. So we can test this right now. We have 4 columns right here because we're at a large breakpoint. If we go to medium to large, then we'll have 2 columns. And if we go anything less, we'll have 1 column. Alright, so now let's go ahead and import our card. So instead of the search field, I'm going to go ahead and search card. And the first one is more than enough that we need. So first I'm going to copy this stuff right here. So this is going to be our use Mantine theme. And we don't need a secondary color. So let's go ahead and just import our use Mantine theme for now, since we're going to be implementing our own dark theme and light theme ability. And let's go ahead and also import it into our app like so. Next, let's go ahead and import all of our tags for the actual card. And so what I'm going to do is, since we've made our grid work with only 3 cards for now, I'm going to get rid of this 4th card right here, and I'll just import it right where the numbers are. So that's 1, and that's 2, and that's 3. Now let's go ahead and import these actual tags. So card from Mantine core, image from Mantine core, group, same thing, text, badge, and we don't want secondary color since we are going to be implementing our own dark theme, light theme that I said earlier, and button as well. What else is left? Bright secondary color. Let's go ahead and get rid of those 2 right here. Awesome. So now if we go back into our app, we should see that our cards are imported, and if we try to make it responsive, we can see that it does collapse properly. Let's go ahead and actually add some images because that is looking really nasty. So the image that I chose to go with was a space image right here by Vincentius Solomon. I hope I pronounced that right. And I'm going to go ahead and copy the image address, and I'm going to paste it wherever this image.png is. And we also have to always give credit to the person taking the image. So I'll just go ahead and do that as well. So instead of on sale, I'll just put in his name like that. And so now if we check it out, it should, beautiful. Look at that beauty. So now if I were to collapse it, it collapses beautifully. Awesome. So now let's go ahead and add a paper and then add our code for the dark theme and light theme button. Alright, so let's go ahead and look at the documentation for dark theme. So going back into it, I'm going to search up dark theme, and my god, this documentation, it's beautiful. That was a chef's kiss right there. And so if I scroll a little bit down, I'm going to see this button right here, this beautiful button. If I click it, it goes between light and dark theme. This is what we're going to be using inside of our file. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this item right here, and I'm going to paste it between these divs. We also have to import all these items as well. And next thing we need to do is we need to import our toggle color theme and whether or not it's dark or light. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this stuff right here. And now let's go ahead and also import our use Mantine color scheme. Alright, and the color scheme that is going to be available to us will be these 10 colors right here. So we don't actually need to worry about importing them. It automatically is part of the color scheme hook. So now what we need to do is we need to contain our app inside of a color scheme provider and a Mantine provider that has our custom color scheme right here. So to do that, it'll be really simple. So I'm going to go back into my code editor. I'm going to save this first of all, and I'm going to go into my app.tsx, and the first thing that I'm going to do is I am going to import color scheme provider, and I'll put in our cards, and I'll also put in our light dark mode button, oops, with a self-closing brace like so. And this color scheme provider needs a few things. It needs to have a color scheme and a toggle color scheme. So I'll just give it color scheme, and we'll just do color scheme. We haven't made this variable yet, don't worry. And the next thing we need is a toggle color scheme like so, and same thing, it'll be called toggle color scheme. And now we need to actually input a Mantine provider hook, oops, Mantine provider tag, and just put in our card and our light and dark mode button. And for this color scheme, I'll just do theme is equal to color scheme, and just to make sure that our background is also dark mode, I'll just do a simple paper. Same thing, I'll just go ahead and import our cards and our light mode and dark mode button inside of there. And for our paper, I'll give it a padding of 0. We'll give it a radius of 0. I meant to give it a padding of mid and a radius of 0. Got that confused. And a style, just make sure that it stretches across the screen. We'll give it a min height of 100 VH. So now what we need to do is we need to create our variables color scheme and toggle color scheme. Alright, so to do that, I'm going to go back into my documentation, and I'm just going to go ahead and copy, I think it was this information right here. If you scroll a little bit more down, it says you're saved to local storage and add a keyboard shortcut. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this information right here, and I'll paste it right above here like so. Let's go ahead and import all of our values. Alright, so let me just quickly walk you guys through what we did here. The first thing we did here, we created a useState-like variable called useLocalStorageValue, which is an actual hook that Mantine provides us to use our local storage values, and it's saying what key we're using and what the default value will be. So it's going to be this key, and our default theme value will be light. Next thing is we're creating our toggle color scheme, which is setting our color scheme to be either light or dark, depending on what value we're giving it. And the last thing right here is called use hotkeys, which is on Windows, I think it's Windows Control J or Windows J, and on Mac is Command J, I think. It'll toggle between light and dark mode. So if I save this and I go into my app, we see our button is right here. We can click it and go back and forth between the two. If I were to save it, we'll see that it saves to our local storage, and I refresh the page. That's working perfectly fine. Let me just see if this works. So Command J on Apple, I think it's Control J or Windows J on Windows. Alright, so it's actually Control J or Command J for Mac and Windows. Cool, so that concludes this tutorial. I hope that it helped you out. I hope you guys learned a lot from it. And in the next tutorial, we'll be expanding on Mantine a lot more. And if you did enjoy this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see y'all in the next one.